In this video, we are going to explore the concept of neuroception and why it's so important in terms of how you feel and how it contributes to your reactivity to triggers relating to past events. So, the nervous system's subconscious process of scanning the environment for threats is known as neuroception, and it was a term coined by neuroscientist Dr. Stephen Porges as part of his polyvagal theory. And this automatic detection system operates without conscious awareness. So it's constantly evaluating safety, danger, or life threatening cues to optimize your survival responses. And there are a few key brain regions involved. So, first of all, we've got the thalamus, and the thalamus routes sensory information to the amygdala and the cortex, a little bit like a gatekeeper, with some signals bypassing cortical processing in order to achieve a faster reaction. We then have the amygdala. The amygdala prioritizes and processes sensory input, and it helps to classify a particular stimulus to determine whether it's a threat or if it's a non-threat. And if a threat is perceived in some way, shape, or form, it will trigger physiological responses like an increased heart rate, sweaty hands, or increased fidgeting. And it acts as a rapid threat detector, and it prioritizes speed over accuracy. And so this means anything that is similar to or even symbolic of the original threatening event, the brain adopts an approach that tends to result in a false positive bias. So it would rather react to something that isn't there and be safe, so be too reactive, as opposed to underreacting to something that is there where you're potentially harmed, or at the extreme it would be a case of where you might die. So the brain prioritizes overreacting compared to underreacting because that's safer. And if we think back to our evolutionary roots, it makes perfect sense, because it would be wiser to react to a movement in the bushes and suspect it's a tiger rather than not reacting and actually find out it was a tiger, but now it's too late to do anything about it. And the other area that we want to talk about is the prefrontal cortex, and this helps to modulate threat responses by adding in context. So it adds in extra information about the environment, emotional reactions, potential risks, and this helps to suppress unnecessary fear, but it also takes longer to engage. So this is the part of the brain that often kicks in when we're more conscious, and we can kind of talk ourselves out of it, or we can reason our way out of the response. But by that point, it's already triggered the alarm bells. And so when we think about why we're on edge sometimes, so to understand neuroception a little bit deeper, we want to understand the different processing speeds. So the amygdala, for example, detects potential threats in under 50 milliseconds, while the conscious awareness and processing in the prefrontal cortex of the exact same stimulus takes around 500 to 600 milliseconds. So this is a 10-factor speed difference that allows us to have reflexive defensive reactions, like flinching, for example, way before we have any conscious perception of what's going on. So as a typical example, if you were to encounter a sudden loud noise, neuroception would activate the amygdala-driven flight or fight response before you can consciously identify that the sound is a car, for example. And it's this rapid processing that enables these subcortical pathways to bypass the slower, more energy intensive, time intensive processes such as conscious awareness. If you ever feel like emotions sometimes like whoosh over you and just happen so quickly that you don't have any time to do anything about it, It's literally because your brain has initiated a chain reaction of chemical events that started 10 times faster than it's even possible for you to consciously come up with an alternative plan. And I think that also helps us to understand those reactions in terms of why it's so difficult to do anything about them because they're so fast. And oftentimes I've found that clients have been beating themselves up for having these seemingly overreactions, but actually, when we understand the chemistry behind it, it makes perfect sense. And I hope that can help you to be maybe a little bit easier on yourself. And it also helps us to see that by talking things through, yes, we can develop different perspectives, we can add new learnings, and we can even add benefits and advantages that come with the passage of time, which help to soften events. But unless we actually neutralize the source of the perception, so unless we neutralize the emotional memory image, it's likely that these responses will continue to happen before we know that they're about to happen. So before any logic can kick in. And that's why neuroception is so key to this process.